next couple of symptomology plots we're going to look at is looking at some of our bleachers. And the first one is mesotrione, commonly in Callisto and several of our other corn herbicide products. Commonly used herbicide in corn. And as we look to the back of the plot where we have corn planted, we see that for the majority of those hybrids, we don't see any injury at all from the Callisto or from the mesotrione. We move up a little closer. There is cotton cultivars in development currently that do have some tolerance to HPPDs. None of these are planted in this plot, but we do have some soybeans that are planted that have some tolerance. And our last two rows of soybean are the LL27 line. And so that gives us some tolerance to the HPPD chemistry. The bulk of that tolerance though is when we apply those chemistries pre or at planting. If we sprayed the full rate post, we would likely see some injury in those two rows as well. But the rest of the soybean varieties planted here all have bleaching symptomology. And so what we're going to focus on now is maybe what that bleaching looks like up close in mesotrione or Callisto versus clomazone or command. Okay, when we look at HPPD symptomology on cotton, again, this is a lower rate, but fairly common with what we could see with the drift rate. Again, we have bleaching, especially with cotton. A lot of times it'll be more bleaching towards the petiole, where the petiole attaches to the leaf like we see there. Or it can spread across the whole leaf, and this doesn't really have any pattern to it whatsoever. It goes across the veins, in between the veins, across the veins, so it's not interveinal. It's not just flushing the veins out. It's just a general whitening of that leaf. Again, it can bleach the whole thing out. Now, in some cases, with younger leaves, we can get a lot of necrosis as well. And so you'll have both sometimes, necrosis and the bleaching. But this is very typical of what we see with HPPD inhibitors on cotton, especially young leaves. Just total lemon yellow color to white. And it usually affects the majority of the leaf. Okay, we're going to zoom in and look a little closer at what HPPD symptomology can look like on a sensitive soybean. And really, when I think about HPPD chemistry, a lot of the times it's going to be more systemic, meaning it's going to move up the plant versus just have symptomology on the lower leaves. But as we look at some of these trifoliates, they are completely bleached out. Now, there may not be as white as what we'll see later in some command leaves on cotton, but it is a whitening with a tint of yellow, and a lot of times we'll see it just on the upper portion of our young trifoliates, like we see right there. It's a bright yellow, but we just still call it a bleacher because it does look white from a distance. But a lot of times you're going to see it most on that new growth in a sensitive soybean. And even on an LL27 soybean, if the rate is high enough, if it gets hit with a full labeled rate, we can still see similar symptomology. It also causes stunting on all of these lines. And if you can compare these to what we've looked at earlier, these soybeans, especially our untreated check, these soybeans are much more stunted where we didn't spray anything or the untreated check. All right, we're sticking with bleachers for a second, and the next one we're going to look at is command or clomazone. We just took a look at HPPD chemistry with mesotrione or Callisto and how it affected both soybean and cotton. We're going to move now to command or clomazone and the ways that it is different from the HPPD symptomology. And we're not showing the whole plot here because we don't have a lot of symptoms. When we look at crops in general, most of them are fairly tolerant to this low of a rate of command. And so we don't generally walk a lot of command drift cases. Only usually with corn, very early on when the corn is small, do we see any bleaching much in the corn, and that's all too old to look at. But what we do see is our typical bleaching pattern, which is interveinal bleaching. So we'll have green veins, and that's a common separation from command from all other bleachers. We talk about having brake herbicide now in cotton. Brake or norflurazone bleach the whole leaf. We just talk about HPPDs bleaching all of the younger growth in a lot of our crops. Command, if it's going to bleach a broadleaf, it bleaches it interveinally. So there will be green veins. And now we're going to zoom in and look at some of these bleaching characteristics. So just to zoom in a little bit and show some of the bleaching we're talking about and the green veins. And in this example, only portion of the leaf is bleached. We see here on this leaf, very distinct green veins, any bleaching or yellowings in between the veins. And especially this leaf right here, you see the green veins. And so if we're trying to, again, differentiate Command from other HPPD bleachers or our other bleachers such as Break, you know, that's some of the characteristics we look at. If we have green veins, we know that that's likely Command, and we can eliminate the other two as potential herbicides that cause the injury.